London in the early 1950s was a city rebuilding itself after the devastation of World War II. It was also a city at the center of one of the most exciting periods in the history of science. Laboratories across Britain were buzzing with research and discovery. A new generation of brilliant young scientists were pushing the boundaries of human knowledge in ways that would change the world forever. And at King's College London, a young woman named Rosalind Franklin was quietly doing work that would turn out to be one of the most important scientific discoveries in human history. Work that would unlock the secret of life itself. Work that would eventually win a Nobel Prize. Just not for her. Rosalind Elsie Franklin was born in London in 1920 into a prominent Jewish family. From her earliest years, it was clear that she was exceptionally gifted. She excelled at science and mathematics at a time when girls were actively discouraged from pursuing academic careers. Her own father initially opposed her going to university, believing that education was wasted on women. But Rosalind Franklin was not someone who accepted limitations quietly. She went to Cambridge University. She earned her PhD. She became one of the leading experts in the world in a technique called X-ray crystallography, a method of using X-rays to reveal the molecular structure of substances. And it was this technique that she brought to King's College London in 1951, where she was assigned to work on one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in science, the structure of DNA. DNA had been known to scientists for decades, but nobody had been able to determine its exact molecular structure. Understanding that structure was considered the holy grail of biology. Whoever solved it would change science forever. Rosalind Franklin approached the problem with extraordinary skill and patience. She spent months perfecting her X-ray crystallography technique, adjusting her equipment, refining her methods. Until on the 6th of May 1952, she captured an image that would change the world. She called it Photo 51. It was an X-ray crystallography image of DNA so clear and so detailed that it revealed something nobody had ever seen before. The double helix structure of DNA. The twisted ladder shape that carries the genetic code of every living thing on Earth. Rosalind Franklin had taken the most important photograph in the history of science. And what happened next was one of the greatest acts of scientific theft ever committed. At the same time, Rosalind Franklin was making her breakthrough at King's College London. Two scientists at Cambridge University, named James Watson and Francis Crick, were also trying to determine the structure of DNA. They had been working on the problem for months without success. Then, in January 1953, something happened that would change everything. A colleague of Rosalind Franklin named Maurice Wilkins showed James Watson Photo 51 without Rosalind Franklin's knowledge or permission. Watson himself later admitted that the moment he saw the image, he immediately understood its significance. The double helix structure of DNA was right there in front of him. He had seen Rosalind Franklin's work without her knowledge, without her consent, and without giving her any credit. Watson and Crick rushed back to Cambridge, and within weeks had built their famous DNA double helix model. Based largely on data and images from Rosalind Franklin's research that they had accessed without her permission. In April 1953, Watson and Crick published their famous paper describing the double helix structure of DNA in the prestigious scientific journal Nature. The paper contained a brief and deliberately vague acknowledgement of having been inspired by the work of others. It did not name Rosalind Franklin specifically. It did not describe the true extent to which her work had been used. The scientific world erupted in celebration. Watson and Crick were hailed as geniuses, as pioneers, as the men who had unlocked the secret of life. Newspapers wrote breathless profiles of the two brilliant Cambridge scientists who had solved one of the greatest mysteries in biology. Meanwhile, at King's College London, Rosalind Franklin continued her quiet work, unaware of how completely her contribution had been erased. Unaware that the photograph she had taken and the data she had generated had been the foundation upon which Watson and Crick had built their Nobel Prize-winning discovery. In 1962, James Watson, Francis Crick, and Maurice Wilkins were awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for their discovery of the structure of DNA. It was one of the most celebrated moments in the history of science. The Nobel Prize is the highest honor in science. and it was given to 3 men for a discovery that could not have been made without the work of a woman whose name was not even mentioned in the acceptance speeches. Rosalind Franklin received no Nobel Prize. No official recognition. No acknowledgement of the central role her research had played in one of the greatest scientific discoveries of the 20th century. The Nobel Committee did not even mention her name. She was erased, as completely and as deliberately as if she had never existed. While Watson and Crick basked in global fame and recognition, Rosalind Franklin continued working. She never complained publicly about what had been done to her. She never sought the spotlight. She simply kept doing what she had always done, using her extraordinary skills to push the boundaries of scientific knowledge. After leaving King's College, she moved to Birkbeck College, London, where she produced groundbreaking research on the structure of viruses. Research that was once again ahead of its time. Once again quietly brilliant. Once again largely unrecognized during her lifetime. She worked with a focus and a dedication that her colleagues described as almost superhuman, as if she knew on some level that time was running out, and tragically it was. In 1956, Rosalind Franklin was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. She was 36 years old. Many researchers have since suggested that her years of working with X-ray equipment without adequate protection may have contributed to her illness. The same dedication to her work that had produced Photo 51 and unlocked the secret of DNA may have ultimately cost her her life. She continued working through her illness with extraordinary courage and determination, refusing to let the cancer slow her down, refusing to give up the work she loved. On the 16th of April 1958, Rosalind Franklin died at the age of 37, 4 years before Watson, Crick, and Wilkins stood on the Nobel Prize stage. 4 years before the world celebrated a discovery that she had made possible. She never knew the full extent of what had been taken from her, and she never received the recognition she so completely deserved. The truth about Rosalind Franklin's contribution to the discovery of DNA began to emerge slowly in the years after her death. James Watson published a memoir in 1968 called The Double Helix, in which he described his first sight of Photo 51 and its impact on his work. The book was meant to be a celebration of scientific discovery. Instead, it inadvertently revealed the extent to which Franklin's work had been used without her knowledge or credit. Scientists and historians who read the book were outraged. For the first time, the full story of what had happened to Rosalind Franklin began to be told publicly, and the more people learned, the angrier they became, because what had been done to her was not just unfair, it was a fundamental violation of scientific ethics. Her work had been stolen, her contribution had been erased, and she had died without justice. Today, Rosalind Franklin is finally receiving some of the recognition she deserved in life. Her photograph, Photo 51, is recognized as one of the most important scientific images ever captured. Her contribution to the discovery of DNA's structure is now widely acknowledged by the scientific community. Buildings, universities, and research institutes around the world have been named in her honor. In 2020, the European Space Agency named their Mars rover the Rosalind Franklin rover in her memory, a fitting tribute to a woman whose work helped reveal the building blocks of all life on Earth. But the Nobel Prize that should have been hers was never awarded posthumously. The rules of the Nobel Committee do not allow prizes to be awarded after death, and so the greatest honor in science will never bear her name. History has corrected itself. But it corrected itself too late for Rosalind Franklin. She deserved better. She deserved so much better. Rosalind Franklin was 37 years old when she died. She had already made one of the most important scientific discoveries in human history. She had already produced groundbreaking research that would shape science for generations, and she died without knowing that her work had been stolen, without knowing that 3 men would stand on a Nobel Prize stage and collect the ultimate reward for a discovery she had made possible. Her story is not just about science. It is about what happens when the world refuses to see brilliance because of who it comes from. Rosalind Franklin was one of the greatest scientists who ever lived, and it is long past time the world knew her name. If this story moved you, please subscribe to Echoes of the Dead, because we tell the stories of the forgotten, the overlooked, and the brilliant, every single week, because every name deserves to be remembered.